This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Did you serve in the military? If so, you can obtain a free lifetime pass to more than 2,000 federal recreation sites. These sites are located across more than 400 million acres of public lands, including national parks, wildlife refuges, and forests. The lands host activities to fit any lifestyle: hiking, biking, fishing, camping, and much more. Gold Star families are also eligible for these free lifetime passes. Plus, they cover entrance fees for a driver and all passengers in a car, or up to 3 additional adults at sites that charge per person. Obtaining one is easy. Just go to the National Park Service website, nps.gov, or the National Park Service app.
All right. Welcome back. MisFitNation. We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their story to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with MisFitNation. If you're a musician or actor, our audience needs to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share some of your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you're a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and share how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you're a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and just share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or are embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you're a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast apps and also on our YouTube channel at _Misfit Nation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date with our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show. All right. Welcome to the Sunday night after dinner Misfit Nation Show. We have a great guest tonight. Before we get there, let's bow our heads and thank the football gods that the Giants finally won today. I know it's against the Redskins or the Commanders. We can't play every week. We got 2 wins against them this year, so a win's a win. So we're happy. So now back to the real show. Our next guest is a retired Navy commander with over 26 years of experience in executive leadership and senior management positions across diverse industries, including positions such as a vice president of strategic technology partner at McAfee, the Intel division, dean of Culver Girls Academy, and currently director of client services for high tech networks and security. Her passion is helping people activate their stem cells, repair their DNA, reverse aging, and get out of pain through the latest photobiomodulation technology. So without further ado, let's welcome U.S. Navy veteran and awesome person Darlene Greene to the show. Welcome, Darlene.
Good evening, Rich. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. And we also have a win against Arizona this year. I don't want to throw that out there in the intro there.
That's not saying much this year.
I know. 2 bad teams playing each other. So, Darlene, if you don't mind, I gave a little bit about you there. Tell us a little more about you from as far back as you want to go to how we got to where we are today.
Sure. So I've had a very varied life. It's been a very interesting So I came into the Navy right out of college, right out of the University of Virginia in a Navy ROTC scholarship. And so was graduating and commissioning the same weekend. I loved my Navy career. I did 20 years, although I will tell you, I only intended to just do my payback tour. So it was as much a surprise to me that I ended up doing 20 years as to anybody else. But, you know, they kept doing things like offering me command positions. I think I was 4 years out of college and I had my first officer in charge of a personnel support detachment. And I was in charge of, 55 people, ages 18 to 65. There were all these departments, lots of money, tons of customers, and my boss was in another state. So I was like, this is really a playground for leadership and learning process control and customer service and really a lot of growth opportunities. So I love that. We did some great things there. And then they said, hey, we would like to send you to Monterey, California, where we will pay for you to go get your master's degree. All you have to do is do a payback tour after that. And I said, sign me up for that. That sounds like a great deal. So I went to Monterey, California and got my MBA and then did the payback tour. And it was after my second daughter actually was born that they said, all of you need to go to sea. It doesn't matter what your situation. And we had a very challenging birth. It was pretty touch and go there for a while. For anybody who knows anything about APGAR scores, my second daughters were 000 at the 11-minute mark. So they were very close to pronouncing her dead. And fortunately, the whole team at Bethesda went to town. There were 12 doctors working to try to revive her. They don't even know what happened or what was wrong. It wasn't like I was at the hospital for hours before then, but they pulled her through and they called her a little miracle baby. But we were still in the first 6 months of watching to see if she would ever talk, walk, hear, have seizures. We really had no idea. And it was at that time that the Navy said, you're all going to sea, pick your aircraft carrier. You're going to be a training officer, an admin officer, something else. And I said, yeah, time out. I'm not doing that. And then they said, well, how about learning to take care of our reservists and go be a commanding officer in Texas at the Navy Operational Support Center there? And I said, that sounds great. So my first real commanding officer job was in Southeast Texas. And it was very interesting because I didn't know at the time, but I was the first woman commanding officer there at the base. We had 1,200 acres. We had 6 warehouses that used to actually make Navy ships. We had a pier and landing craft, and the Mexican Navy ships would come in. It was a really exciting and interesting base. And the whole town absolutely loved us. So it was made all the more special by that. But I did have a little bit of an issue because this was sort of like man's country, and a woman coming in and being the boss is not something that they were really ready to accept. So I was trying to figure out, like, how do I earn their respect very quickly? And I'll tell you something that just sort of came out before I'd even really thought about it was I challenged everyone in my command. It was 120 people to a competition, my staff and all the reservists, for the physical fitness test. And I said, push up for push up, sit up for sit up. I challenge you. Anybody who beats me, I will present your favorite soda of choice at an all hands. And of course, it was mostly for camaraderie and bonding. And I had a lot of people coming up and saying, we're going to take you down, ma'am. And it was really fun, right? But I was then thinking, what have I done? I literally had just had a C-section child. I hadn't even taken a physical fitness test since then. I'm like, holy cow, get in shape right now really fast. So I was doing the physical fitness test twice every morning, every day until we did the physical fitness test. And we got to the day of, and there was this guy that worked for me, and he was on his way to SEALs and hoping to be in SEALs. He was going to BUDS training. And he runs over after we've done the push-ups and he said, I did 126 push-ups, ma'am. How many did you do? And I turned to the counter and I said, how many push-ups did I do? And he turns and he goes, she did 127, man. I can hardly believe it. And he's like, what? And then some curse words might have come out of his mouth, and he ran off. And turns out I did, I think, 136 push-ups, and I had a faster swim time than everybody had a run time except one person. So I presented one soda to a runner who was faster than my swim time, didn't have many more push-ups or sit-ups than me, and it was a woman. Oh. So anyway, that was pretty cool. So as I left that tour, that was a really special tour. I was presented a key of the city of Orange, Texas, and a key to the city of Lake Charles, Louisiana. And my wardroom actually presented me with a sword. And when they gave it to me, they said, this is symbolic, and it means we will follow you into battle anywhere. So I don't think I've ever been so moved by a gift in my entire life as I was that one. That was super, super special. I guess my final commanding officer tour was in Naval Operational Support Center, Phoenix, Arizona. We had 1,200 reservists, 800 Navy and 400 Marines, and a large staff that supported them. And one of the things that I did was I sat with all of the people that were being deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever they were off going to, and then I sat with them and their spouse on their way back. And Rich, one of the things I learned was that they were hurting. And I don't know, honestly, if I would have seen it if I hadn't been through my own trauma. And I had trauma. I had PTSD. I had depression, anxiety. I had EMDR, talk therapy, all of these things, medicines, all sorts of stuff. So I was able to see pain in a way that I'm not sure I would have recognized until I had experienced it. And what I realized was we weren't doing anything to take care of them upon their return. There was no thank you. There was no ticker tape parade. These reservists were plucked out of their worlds on almost no notice, sometimes 2 weeks, and then they were off for a year. And then they were coming back, and the problems were endless, from the PTSD to the adrenaline rushes to wanting to go back, and spouses not understanding that at all. So I stood in front of about, 400 reservists one weekend, and I said, I want to build a program that does a better job of taking care of you and your families upon return. I have no idea what that needs to look like, but I bet you do. And if you would help me, we could build something great together. And I had a ton of volunteers. And out of that, we built the Returning Warrior Weekend Workshop. And it took us a year. It was not an easy thing. We had obstacle after obstacle. You can't spend this kind of money on that. You can't do this. You can't. We heard more you can't do's than I'd like to shake a stick at. But we would always figure out a way because it was just that important. And we had our first one, and we had probably 120 people. And the response was amazing. We basically took the military member and their spouse away for a weekend, and we had keynote speakers and then small group discussions. We had established a curriculum. We had created facilitators. We had to build the program from scratch because every program in the world was based on units deploying and units coming back. But we had sent these people over as individuals, which was part of the problem. They didn't have a team of people that they were talking to on the way back, or that they all recognized that they were experiencing things together. The spouses had no team of spouses that they could talk to. And so they had been very alone. So we had some unique obstacles to overcome. So we put this together. We had small groups discussions, including one of why I want to go back. Because imagine, the spouses are hearing the week these guys are getting back or these gals are getting back, and the first things out of their mouth is, I need to go back. And that was crushing to their souls, and potentially marriages, until we had small group discussions with facilitators saying, let's talk about that. How many of you? And everybody raised their hand, and then everybody got to see this is not about me and my husband or wife and my marriage. This is something bigger that I don't understand. So we had therapists and counselors and chaplains and nurses and doctors and a big safety net, because I was kind of nervous because I knew I had a lot of people with PTSD. We did a lot of tracking of metrics of how people were doing before, during, and then afterwards, including 3 months afterwards. And 100% of people said it was really invaluable, that they would recommend it for others, and that we had a ton of amazing feedback, including things like, you saved my marriage, you saved my life. I mean, really moving things. So my boss asked me to take it throughout the Southwest region, which we did. And then I retired from the Navy at that point with 20 years, and they continued it to take it throughout the nation. They brought me back on active duty at one point to explain to the Marine Corps why we built this program the way we did and what it all meant and how we did it and why we did it that way. And they were creating their own program, but it is still in existence today. 17 years later, it's funded and supported by the Department of Defense Yellow Ribbon Panel, and have put through just a ton of not just reservists, but it extended to the active duty military at some point as well for all of those individual augmentees. So I don't know that I've ever had a job that was that intrinsically rewarding. It was a very tough job to leave on because obviously this was my baby. I had a team of people that helped create this. I loved them all. They wanted me to stay with it, but quite honestly, there is something called secondary trauma, and my soul and my heart was aching from the pain of listening to the story after story after story, and I needed the break. I was not able to continue in any capacity. I just needed to sort of step away and have somebody else take it, and that's very hard to do, but it is what I needed to do. And if I had learned anything in my lifetime of dealing with trauma, it was I have to put my own oxygen mask on first, so that I can better take care of my kids and my family along the way. So that was my last job in the Navy. And then of course, you have, you're meeting with people, you're trying to figure out your resume, and they're saying, well, what industry do you want to work in? And I'm like, well, I could work in any industry. I've had, medical, dental, I've had CVs in engineering, I've had construction, I've had, all of these things. And they're like, no, you have to pick an industry. And I was like, why do I have to pick an industry? I don't know which industry. But anyway, suffice it to say, I ended up landing in technology and very much enjoyed that. I oversaw initially architects and engineers and project managers on the network and hardware and voice and data side of the house. And then I went to, funny story, right? And only because of the military would I have the sense of confidence to be able to do these things, because I really knew nothing of the details around any of that. And then I went to apply for this job as a vice president at McAfee, and this was all software. I had zero software background. In fact, the HR interview that I had went a little bit like this. Okay, so do you have 15 years of architectural engineering? And I said, no, ma'am. Oh, well, do you have a strong CRM and SaaS background? No, I don't. She asked me 7 questions, and I said no to all of them. No. She got to the end and she said, well, I see you live in Arizona. Would you be moving to Santa Clara or Plano, Texas if you got the job? And I said, oh, no, I'm not moving. I'm so sorry, but my family just moved here from Alaska after 27 years of being up there. I have not been around family my whole life, and I'm going to do this remotely if I get this. You could just hear her hang her head, and she said, you have a very impressive resume, but I just don't see this as a good fit. So then I got a call 2 weeks later. It was this HR officer, and she was really kind of ticked off, and because the CIO, the chief information officer, had been telling her, I want to interview her, because there was a person in McAfee that knew me and said, this is exactly who you need to hire. So she said, well, I'm going to give you an interview, but you're not getting it in person, and you're only getting 30 minutes. And, she was so mad about it. So anyway, I got an interview with him. And at the end, he said, do you have any questions? And I said, yes. How do you see me as a fit for this job? And he said, I realized that I don't have any trouble with architecture or engineering. My problems are people and leadership and communications and process and management and the things that you do really well. And so I would really like for you to continue the interview. So anyway, suffice it to say, I did end up getting that job, and they had to rewrite the job description just to make it so that I fit in the job. And the CIO told me I was his best leader, and it was the smartest decision he had made. But again, I would say to you that was not a job that if I was younger and earlier in my military career, one of the things you learn, every job I had, they would throw me in something brand new. I would be put in a position of great responsibility, and I would think, holy cow, do I have any idea how to do this? But you rely on your senior leadership, your senior enlisted leadership, your team, and you ask a lot of questions, and you go in with a lot of humility, and you learn, right? And you learn fast. And as long as you're taking care of your team will take care of you. And so I just really felt like I really could do whatever they threw at me at this point in my life. So then I left that, and my daughters wanted to go to this amazing school called Culver Girls Academy out in Indiana, middle of nowhere in Indiana, right on Lake Maxinkuckee. And I mean, this is 2 hours to Indianapolis and 2 hours to Chicago. And this was not something that I could do my McAfee job from. I remember crying a lot of nights and saying to my husband, tell me again how great this school is. Because the three of them all wanted to be in Culver, Indiana. And I was just not convinced. But here I was, getting out of this great job and heading to this little tiny town, had no idea what I was going to do there. But we got there, and I remember having shoulder surgery and thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then the dean of the Culver Girls Academy position opened up. And I was like, I could do that. And my husband said, no, you can't do that. That they are PhDs that have had boarding school experience, and you should see the resumes that are coming in, because he was now working for the school. And I said, it's a leadership school. The leadership is my forte. I know leadership. And anyway, I did get the job, and I thought I did it pretty well, actually. I had a lot of positive feedback on that. And then my daughters didn't like that too much. And what I did learn about that is it was a job better suited for someone who didn't have a family and didn't want to spend any time with the family. Because in essence, I had 350 girls that were mine. And I felt like to do that right, I needed to go to their events and I needed to go to their academics. And there was always a girl in crisis. Somebody had lost a parent or had something tragic happen to them. So I didn't do that for very long, but I did enjoy it. That was another one that was very emotionally exhausting because I cared so much, and I'm maybe too empathetic, actually. So then I came out of that as soon as the last daughter graduated, we always had an escape strategy to get back to Arizona. And that's when I became the director of client services for back into the network and hardware, and oversaw the standing up of a program management office and oversee project managers. And but all of that leads me to really kind of the thing that I'm most passionate about, which is really LifeWave and activating stem cells in people through elevating their GHKCU. And that came about kind of from a bit of a tragedy. I had not married well twice. So suffice it to say, I was never going to get married again or even date again for a really long time. So the angels imparted upon me my current husband and said, and this was truly a gift, because he is unparalleled as a human being and just an incredible and wonderful human being. A couple of years ago, we've been married 16 years and together 20. And a couple of years ago, several, he began a neurological decline that we later had diagnosed as Alzheimer's, early Alzheimer's, because he is young. And this was, I did not take to that news kindly. I was like, we will figure this out and we will fix this. But, the Banner Alzheimer's Clinic says, come back and see us in a year. We'll tell you how far he's declined in a year. There was no good medicine. There was no good treatment. And when I would ask questions, any questions, they just really didn't have any answers. So again, doing a lot of research, and everything was pointing to stem cells. So we went out of country for stem cells 4 times, IV stem cells at great expense. I mean, I was willing to mortgage the house if we had to, whatever it took, because this was his life. With early Alzheimer's, it's more aggressive. And so, you can have a death sentence in 10 years. It can be 5 to 10 years, really. So I was in a desperate state to try to figure out what to do. So we went out of country 4 times to get IV and injections of stem cells. It was like $10,000 each IV. And we didn't really see any results. We did that for him. We also did that for me. I had 3 autoimmune system diagnoses, like, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia. I just wanted to stop passing out and not have to take a medicine that increased my blood pressure anymore. If I could accomplish that, I would feel great. So we were both doing that and not getting any better. His decline continued. We tried hyperbaric chamber 3 times a week for a month. We tried ozone therapy, hydrogen water. We entirely revamped the diet, including following Dr. Bredeson's protocol, which if anybody has any kind of neurological decline, they need to know about Dr. Bredeson. He's the only one that I think is actually reversing Alzheimer's entirely. And that's not an easy plan, but we did it. And that meant we pulled out alcohol, and we pulled out sodas, and we pulled out anything not genetically modified, and we pulled out high carbs, and we pulled out, sugar, flour, white flour, wheat flour. We did daily strength and high intensity training. We worked on sleep protocol. We did everything. And we still do all of that. But we really weren't seeing any improvement. At the point in time where I was introduced to these patches, my husband was really just a shell of his former self. Jim was napping 3.5 hours a day. Jim, by the way, was a 30-year Navy veteran, Navy captain. He was an aviator and had landed on an aircraft carrier 1,200 times. He was just sort of renowned. Actually, he has a legendary Ripper Man. If you ever heard of the Red Rippers, which was he created the persona of Ripper Man, and that cape has gone up into space. And I mean, he's like written up in books. He's really kind of a legend and funny, just funny. So but at this point he was sleeping all day and falling asleep at night early and not really even engaging in conversation anymore. It was just too challenging for him. So if he did engage, he was several conversations behind. He would ask the same question 7 times in 3 minutes. But the thing that really broke my heart was he wasn't even trying to be funny. I mean, earlier when he was first starting the decline, he would try to be funny, but he wouldn't land it. And, he'd have the wrong word, or he wouldn't have the punchline right, or it would just not sit. But he was trying, and that was who he was, and we would all laugh. But now he wasn't even trying to be funny anymore, and he was completely disengaged. So it was heartbreaking, actually. And someone said, I know you guys were interested in stem cells, and there's this patch that activates and elevates copper peptide, and copper peptide elevates and activates your stem cells. So your own stem cells. It's not like somebody else's stem cells coming into your body. They're your own. And we have had miraculous transformation in our family. Why don't you try it? And it was $99 for a 1 month supply. And I said, yes, that's way better than what we were spending. So we began wearing this little tiny patch. It's like the size of a quarter. It works in this phenomenal way. So how when you go out in the sun, your body responds to the light by making vitamin D or even melanin for a suntan, right? So we actually understand that light has a chemical response in us. That's photobiomodulation right there. And light therapy has actually been in existence for 5,000 years. What this does, if I looked at you, and military understand this because they are familiar with night vision goggles, but people understand that I could look at you and see light inside of you with night vision goggles. You have light inside of you. So what this patch does, it's like these little nanocrystals hermetically sealed. It's kind of like a little mirror that reflects your own light back into you at a very specific wavelength that elevates your own copper peptide, which then activates your stem cells. And copper peptide has been, I had never heard of it, by the way, never heard of copper peptide. I think a lot of people have not heard of copper peptide. I now know there are books written. Have you heard of it before?
I have not. I wrote it down when you said it.
No. So here's a book called How to Reverse Aging, A Comprehensive Guide to Copper Peptide. Apparently this has been around 50 years, very well studied. You can go into PubMed, Google it. You can find out all about it, and you can see all the results. And we can talk about some of the things that it can do, because our veterans really need to know, and even non-veterans, everybody needs to understand. People can get copper peptide through injections, but this one doctor said, look, I was injecting 4 times a day, and I was not getting the same results as this one patch, this X39 patch, for 24 hours. So I don't know, it seems the cheaper and the least painful way from my way. Anyway, so we started these patches, and Rich, the very first day, the very first week, he didn't nap at all. He had been napping for a year. He didn't fall asleep. He didn't fall asleep at the 7 p.m. show. He was so chatty. It was sort of like a dam broke, and out came 2 years of conversation. I was just like, what is going on? And he was not just talking like word salad. He was replying quickly and appropriately, and he was with it. He was not asking me the same question over and over again, which I'm very grateful for as a care provider. For any care provider out in the world, God bless you, because it is so hard. It is not easy to just continue to be patient and kind and sweet and loving when things are so frustrating. But he was not asking me the same question over and over again anymore. But most important, and perhaps what warmed my heart the most, is that he was funny, and he was flirty again. He was back to his original personality. And that was, I got my husband back in 1 week. That was just the first week. The second week, he recorded the best deep sleep he'd ever had. He went from 15 minutes of deep sleep to an hour and 25 minutes of deep sleep. And I think 80% of the world is actually lacking in good quality deep sleep. And then at the 2.5 month mark, he regained his ability to whistle, which he had lost along the way. And he's a really good whistler, like a musical instrument kind of whistler. He also regained the ability to drum to the beat, and his blood pressure dropped to 37 points. So into a normal stage. They had wanted to put him on medicine, but that's a little tricky with something like Alzheimer's because you want to get the blood up to the brain. So reducing blood pressure is a bit of a problem in an unnatural way. So that was fantastic. A large marble-sized nodule that he'd had for 20 years just disappeared entirely at the 4 month mark. I don't know where it went. It was the strangest, large, like the largest marble you know of, that was right under his skin, like a cyst or something. And it didn't hurt him, but it just went away. And then at the 5 month mark, he regained his sense of smell, which he had lost 15 years ago. Now, I didn't know then what I know now, which is that losing your sense of smell can be an early warning indicator for Alzheimer's. So really amazing. So he not only regained his sense of smell, but his bald spot, which had been very big since that day I met him, began closing in and closing in. And in place of his gray hair, chestnut brown hair came in. And I said, whoa, I've never known you to have chestnut brown hair. Like you've had sort of blonde or silver. And he said, I said, when have you ever had chestnut brown hair? And he said, well, I did when I was a kid. So I want to say, he is not cured. I don't want anybody to walk away thinking that he is not got Alzheimer's anymore. But I do have my husband back, and he has had these neuro gains, and I do have hope. I have to put out this disclaimer that LifeWake products are not intended to cure, treat, diagnose, or prevent disease, even if they do. But we have amazing success, and that's just his story. I mean, I have really my own story because I was depressed, and this is really key to so many. I mean, you had a whole thing at the beginning of the show on suicide and suicide prevention. And, as someone who has had PTSD and was at the time depressed at the beginning, before we started these patches, I was seeing a therapist. I was depressed for a very good reason. My husband has Alzheimer's, right? I think that's a pretty good reason. But my best friend, I had lost him, and I didn't expect to have any gains again. But I'd also broken my foot, sprained my ankle, needed surgery, and I'd been in pain for 5 months. And so my normal stress coping mechanisms of play, like pickleball or exercise or walks around the neighborhood, I couldn't do anymore. And I noticed that, if I just even asked Jim for a glass of water, he would just look at me like, I don't even know what you're talking about or how to do that for you. So I don't know that I knew how bad it was until I was in a situation where I had to ask him to do something for me, because I just had been doing things for both of us. So I was pretty depressed. So I began to patch, and we have a patch called Ice Wave that is unbelievable. Within 15 seconds, it takes pain that's even as high as a 10 and 1 to 10. If 10 is the worst, it can drop it to a 0 in 15 seconds. I mean, I'm the person that doesn't respond well to Percocet, Vicodin, morphine. I've had an anesthesiologist say to me, we've given you enough to put down a small elephant. I don't know how you could be in pain. And I'm like, well, that's rude. And I'm still in pain anyway. So figure it out. So for me to say that this works is saying something, because I don't respond to anything. And so for me to get out of pain for the first time in 5 months was amazing. And I thought it was maybe a fluke, like maybe this was the day. But I took the patch. You wear the patch on for 12 hours and you take them off after 12 hours. So that your body can rest and then get the signal. You don't want it to get used to the signal, because then it will not respond anymore. Just like, parents and kids, like the parent keeps saying the same thing and the kid just like tunes it out after a while. Sort of same thing with the signal. So anyway, took off the patches, and in 15 minutes, my ankle had been throbbing again. But beyond just that, my depression lifted. My depression just completely lifted, and I had joy and gratitude. And I was no longer having headaches. My rosacea cleared. My skin got soft. I lost 10 pounds effortlessly. I no longer stress ate with emotion. I've literally had a sugar addiction probably since high school. I used to look at the menu for the dessert first and then figure out what I wanted from the main meal after that. That's how I approach life, But there's a patch that literally is great for addictions, SP6, and it basically does something in your brain that sort of calms it down and prevents you from having hunger and sugar cravings. And that has been the most remarkable feeling for me, to finally feel like, oh, maybe this is what the rest of the world sort of normally feels like. It's not like this, when am I getting my next sugar fix thing? And I feel that way now. And so it's a lovely thing. So, my family, after the first week, I was like, you're all on this. You all have to try this. This is amazing. And they all have their own little success stories, from chronic microscopic colitis that had been there 6 years, disappearing, to a suicidal relative lifting the depression, and to fibromyalgia friends or cousin who no longer had to take any kind of ibuprofen around the clock or have pain, to plantar fasciitis clearing, to also, they all have their story. And that's when I began feeling just kind of crazy about these products. And honestly, Rich, a bit pissed off, because where was this 2 years ago when my husband was first diagnosed? Why didn't I know about it? I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of research. I asked a lot of doctors questions, and I had never heard of this before. I mean, it was just by chance that a friend happened to know that I had happened to go out to get IV stem cells. And you look into it, and then you find there were over 300 Olympians wearing these LifeWave patches in the 2008 Olympics. This company's been around 20 years. Serena Williams, David Beckham, Michael Phelps, Ivory Sully, 5-time NFL Outstanding Teams player said in September, Tom Brady's wearing these patches. I'm like, how is this possible that I didn't know about this? And then I find out there are over 90 clinical studies, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. There's patents, and some of the studies are astonishing. One of them, for the heart, every 6 weeks, your cardiovascular system starts functioning as if it were 8 weeks younger wearing this patch. How many people are dying of heart attacks right and left? And here we have a lightwave therapy patch that can actually make that kind of a difference. The guy that wrote this book, Dr. John Harmon, he had a right branch bundle blockage. I can barely say that. Right branch bundle blockage. There's no cure. There's no medicine. There's no surgery. But in 14 months on the patches, it disappeared and it was not there anymore. Unbelievable. There's a great study on the brain. And this is one I want, you can go to my website and you can actually look at the studies. You can look at the pictures of the brain. There's a 2019 SciTech study by Chevalier. And what I love about this study is it shows EEG images of the brain. Now, this is something that everybody who's got anxiety, depression, PTSD, ADHD, autism, anything that's memory issues that's preventing solid performance of your brain ought to take note of, because this was a 6-week study as well. They did an EEG of the brain before they began wearing the X39, and then at the 3-week mark, and then at the 6-week mark. And what they found was, like, let's say that the person started with hypercoherence, a red sphere, and that red symbolizes and is a sign of inflammation, the anger and the PTSD and the ADHD, and poor communication across the 2 hemispheres. At the 3-week mark, the color maps are changing. The yellows, the greens, the blues are coming in, and you can see it. And then at the 6 week, it's even better. And the people are reporting improved symptoms. Well, I'm just calmer. I'm remembering things better. I'm more focused. Well, it turns out the actual study findings include the following. Yes, it increased GHK-Cu, which remind me to tell you all the benefits of that, because there are some great anti-cancer benefits and all sorts of things. Yes, it supported cell and nerve regeneration. It balanced the brain. It improved coherence. It improved the nervous system. It lowered anxiety. It decreased brain inflammation. It improved memory, focus, cognitive brain function, and task processing ease and speed. All of those things. And I got to see that in my husband that quickly, but I also got to feel it in myself.
That's amazing just to hear those things, and knowing so many of our brothers and sisters who we fought with or served with have gone through these trials and tribulations and not had the help. But I got a quick break right now to pay some bills, but we'll be right back with Darlene Greene talking more about stem cell, the life wave patches, the ice wave, all the waves, all the wave patches, and hopefully some of us will get more help. So we'll be back in about 30 seconds.
All right, Misfit Nation, we have partnered with another great company, Magic Mind. When we wake up in the morning, you know we need that energy. The Misfit Nation runs on high energy. We go all day. We start our office at 6 a.m. The Misfit Nation doesn't turn out until about 8 p.m. at night. So this little bit of juice right here from Magic Mind will get you going with no shakes, no after effects, 4 hours of constant energy. So go to magicmind.com, mention the Misfit Nation, and get yours.
All right, we're back with Darlene Greene, and we're learning a lot tonight. I have a whole page of notes already. It was like listening to a TED Talk almost, and I was just sitting there as the kid in the audience writing all the notes down. So it was amazing for me. I know a lot of audience members are probably taking notes too. Darlene, we all have family members or people in our lives that suffer through, like you did it yourself with PTSD, depression, anxiety. How quick did the patch help you? And for those who are taking medications, can they get off the medication thanks to the patch?
So I would say for me, I think it was the second or third week that I noticed it. And that's consistent. Most people, I think it's 80% of people experience a feeling, a change, an improvement within 3 to 6 weeks. You know, if you look at the brain scan, it was really, you know, it got better at the 6 week point than the 3 week. But I would say I noticed it. And I noticed more energy in the first week. I noticed better sleep in the first week. I noticed the pain relief from the ice wave right away. But even X39, especially coupled with our anti-inflammation patch, can help with pain relief. I've had a lot of reports of people who say it's taken like 2 to 3 weeks for them as well to feel that lift of depression. And we are seeing people who don't need medicines. Like I'm not taking that medicine, fluorocortisone, anymore to raise my blood pressure. I have friends who aren't taking their thyroid medicine anymore. I have friends who don't need their ADHD medicine. After 15 days, they didn't need it ever again. I have friends who, I mean, they don't need, you know, I would be, you know, people can take any of the medicines. There are no contraindications with this patch because there's no medicine going into the skin, right? It's just your own light being reflected back upon you. So, you know, but you might want to check how you feel. You might check your blood tick. You know, a lot of people come off their blood pressure medicines. A lot of people don't need their cholesterol medicines anymore. You know, hormones get balanced. So you don't necessarily need to be on the same levels of hormones, and you might need to get those rechecked. But it's putting your body into a state of homeostasis and balance again the way it needs to be. And for, you know, elderly men, that means popping up their testosterone again. And women too. We actually need testosterone raised to give us energy, and it's getting it in the right place. So I would say 80% experience feeling some improvement within 3 to 6 weeks, but what they recommend is a month for every decade you are old. This cellular regeneration does not occur overnight. Now, ice wave occurs immediately. That gets you out of pain. That works differently. This is not elevating copper peptide to activate your stem cells. And you hear me talk that way, by the way. The FDA came out recently and they said stem cells, including the ones that are in your own body, are now a drug. So even though we have double-blind placebo-controlled studies that says that this increases stem cells and activates stuff, it's even in the patent. If you actually read the patent, it says that. We can't say that anymore because we'll get in trouble with the FDA. So what I'm saying is that X39 elevates and activates copper peptide, and copper peptide increases stem cells and produces and activates those. So I'm just doing a little bit of a dance across there, and that's why. If you think about wearing a month for every decade you are old, then you're giving your body that chance to elevate enough copper peptide to activate all of those stem cells. You know, when you're 30, Rich, half of your stem cells are dormant. And when you're 60, they're nearly all dormant. And this is why we are really aging and we're not healing as quickly as when we were little. People are calling this the holy grail of anti-aging. And this one anesthesiologist, and I love his quote because he is a 40-year physician, and he calls it the most significant medical breakthrough in my lifetime. the most significant, because if you don't know about stem cells, let's talk about them for a second. They can be anything in your body. Stem cells can become bone or muscle or tissue or anything, the brain, heart, lungs. There is nothing that they can't go, and they go where they need to go to do the repair work that they need to do wherever in your body. And so, I would like to say, hey, you need all of you need to go right up to my husband's brain. They may say, oh, but Darlene, Jim was a Navy sailor, honey. We need to start with his liver. Who knows? I don't know where they're going first. I just got to be hanging in there long enough so I start to see some of these benefits. And that's why over time, some of these harder things, and we have seen people have remarkable, there's probably not anything I have seen. There's on my website, you can actually see pictures. There's a picture of someone who has lung cancer, and you can see her skeleton and PET scan. And on the one side, you see all the little white spots. There's circles showing the cancer that's completely throughout the whole body. And 5 months later, she was basically told she was having to have an eating tube. She couldn't swallow anymore because the cancer had closed up her throat. She was told, you have 4 to 6 months to live. We're really sorry, but there's nothing we can do for you. And 5 months later, her PET scan shows no cancer. And not just that, like my girlfriend that actually introduced me to these, her cousin is a veteran, Agent Orange veteran. He would be great to talk to. He had basically was in bed rest. He was on round the clock medicine, pain medicine. He was in a walker or a wheelchair. And they were preparing his affairs to die. And the doctors were saying, we're going to give you this medicine. It's going to kill you, but it will improve your quality of life until you die. He sold off all his cows. He was a farmer. They were getting the affairs in order. And my friend Dina said, please, Robert, take these patches. These are really having these amazing results for us. Try them out. So he did. In 2 days, he was out of bed and out of pain. I mean, he went from, when she asked him, what's your pain level 0 to 10? He said it's a 22, and immediately got to a 0 within a minute. And then within days, he's out of bed, he's running around. And then in 2 weeks, he's traveling, and he went to Pearl Harbor for a bucket list trip with Dina's dad and went to see USS Arizona. And they did 2 6-hour tours, no walker and no wheelchair. He has since donated them both. He is not on meds. His white cell count has dropped. He is living a normal, healthy life. He bought all of his cows back. He's fishing, he's living life. And this was a man that was just literally at death's door. So, and when you think about, well, why? Well, when you Google if you looked in PubMed, or you looked in this book, or you looked up copper peptide, it's been used for treating cancer for some time. It's got very strong anti-cancer benefits. In fact, it topped 1309 bioactive compounds, which is the recommended treatment for colon cancer. It reset programmed cell death of human cancer cells, including human neuroblastoma, leukemia, and breast cancer cells. But, Rich, it did not affect the healthy cells. It inhibited NFKB-P65, which is believed to promote cancer, and repaired damaged DNA. It reset 84 genes to growth or cancer inhibition. And then it has, for the heart, we talked about the heart study that was done on X39, but if you look at studies on copper peptide, it's known to reduce fibrinogen synthesis, which is the top predictor of cardiovascular heart disease, as well as increase myostatin, which inhibits heart failure. It protects lungs. It's an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. It alters the genes, and it alters genes. It upregulates the ones that we want better, and it downregulates. So it modulates neurotransmitters. So it's just, copper peptide is just magic, and this elevates our own. It's just amazing.
I can tell how passionate you are about it. It has all these qualities. I did a search earlier today on serums and such, and I didn't realize it was copper peptides, but now I just looked again, and it all comes up as like facial creams and stuff.
Yeah, so a lot of people, yeah, people have injections, facial creams, or this patch. That's the only way that I know of that's the only, when you look at this book, who took all the study, the doctor, he pulled all the things available on copper peptide into one place And this book is fairly recently published. And he talks about injections, creams, or the patch. And, he strongly recommends the patch. He doesn't say that in the book, but I've seen him talk about it because he is actually a big kind of brain specialist, and he strongly recommends that. I mean, when you think about wearing this 24 hours resets 3,000 to 4,000 genes to a younger, healthier state, that alone is huge. And most people, when they wear this, they feel rapid pain relief, reduced inflammation, wound healing, energy and vitality, mental clarity, enhanced sports performance, faster recovery from exercise, and improved skin appearances. I mean, I talked about my rosacea clearing, but I've had dry skin for my whole life. Like, I've traveled with the Cetaphil tub, that heavy cream every day. I mean, that was just me.
You moved to Arizona.
Yeah, and I went to Arizona. I had scaly elbows. I have the softest skin. I still can't believe that this is my skin. It still surprises me because it is so soft. And I also have you can actually, for those of you looking, I have all of these little baby hairs that are all over the place, little like broccoli forest. They're just like my husband's balding pattern was closing up, but I have all this new hair growth too. And they're not quite long enough to sit down and lie down, but I'm not complaining. It just sounds like I'm not complaining. But yeah, I mean, this is not only, it also helps with scarring. So if you can think about the fact that one of the things that the increasing collagen can do for you, which the copper peptide does increase collagen, is remodeling. So it will go in, it will tear down old scar tissue, not just on the outside of our body, but also on the inside. Like, I've had 2 shoulder surgeries, a knee surgery, 2 feet surgeries, an ankle surgery. I mean, you name it. Like, I've got scar tissue. Well, this goes in and it starts, kind of eating away at that bad collagen and rebuilding it in a really lovely knitted way and helping it remodel into the way it should be, like brand new. And there's a reason this company has exploded since X39 came out, because in fact, it's 20 times growth in the last 4 years. And that's because this is just, people like me can't stop talking about it. I feel like it would be criminal. In fact, there is, anybody who's had the COVID vaccine, anybody who's had COVID, anybody who has been around people that had the COVID vaccine has a spiked protein, most likely has spike protein. If you had COVID or the vaccination, you definitely have spike proteins. And if you don't know what spike proteins are, please Google them, because they are really harmful and you all have them. And what happens is it affects and causes inflammation in the heart. It affects your respiratory system. And it has these long-term damages that it causes. Glutathione is your body's master antioxidant and immune booster. And I'd never, until like 2 years ago, I'd never heard of glutathione, but it is the body's master antioxidant. It's a really, really good thing to be doing in a pandemic, particularly when you have autoimmune disorders, right? So I was actually taking glutathione via IV and also orally before I learned about the patches. But what I found out was my little IV that was very expensive was only raising my glutathione levels 27% for 7 minutes. This patch that we have that raises and elevates glutathione on average 300% for 24 hours, that's phenomenal. I mean, glutathione as your body's master antioxidant, it also detoxifies and gets rid of toxins from your system. It helps to protect DNA and repair your damaged cells. It's associated with people who live the longest in life. In fact, if you were to Google blue zone, people in the blue zone have the highest levels of glutathione anywhere. And it's associated with long length of life. It improves collagen. In fact, there are people that wear an Eon on one side of a knee and a glutathione on the other. They did a study and they found that they could avoid knee surgery because it rebuilt cartilage in their knee, something that doctors would never tell you about. Rebuilds cartilage in the knee, people with bone on bone. It does some other things like it definitely improves acne. It improves organ function. It protects the myelin sheath. And if anybody has Parkinson's, they know the myelin sheath is everything. But what these three together do, and I probably can't make this because it probably sounds like a medical claim, but what I can tell you is I have anecdotal evidence that supports that this gets rid of spike proteins, because my girlfriend had a live cell study done. She had spike proteins on every one of those cells. And after 6 weeks of wearing these 3 patches, the X39, the Eon for anti-inflammation, and the glutathione, those were all gone except one, and it was on its way out the door. The reason we recommend the anti-inflammation patch with the X39 is because inflammation eats up stem cells. So if you can reduce the inflammation, which is sort of the root of all evil anyway, you can reduce inflammation while you activate those copper peptide to then activate your stem cells. Now you've got those stem cells really working for you. And it may have been that maybe the stem cells that we got in Mexico would have worked better if I had reduced inflammation. Maybe they just got all eaten up by the inflammation that we had in our body. I don't know. It's possible. So anyway, there's just, it's an amazing product suite. Everybody, I think, needs ultimately X39 and Eon, and ultimately glutathione too, to get rid of those spike proteins, even if it's just for a couple of months. And it's affordable. The Eon is just like $49 for a 1 month supply. The X39 is $99. The glutathione is $49. I mean, when you compare it to the cost of healthcare, the cost of prescriptions, the cost of IV, the cost of disease, the quality of life, pain. I mean, what would people not pay to get out of pain? There was a woman that had 2,400 days of migraines. She had a surgery that went bad, a sinus surgery that went bad, that then ended up causing her to have brain surgery. She had what was called Sluter's neuralgia, 2,400 days of migraines. And in 5 minutes, Ice Wave and X39, her pain went away. 5 minutes. Bam. Wow. Just go. And she has not had a day of migraine since then. And when she talks about her story, though, she'll tell you that's not the best story. That's not the best part. The best part is her daughter, who was 16 years old and had like spinal meningitis as a child, who had never unfolded her arms ever in her life. In 24 hours on the X39, was giggling, and they went in to see her holding her arm over her head for the first time in her life. Just there's, you know, it's just miraculous. I think we forget about alternative options because we are so conditioned to think about our Western medicine doctor, and we forget that our Western medicine doctors have been trained in a curriculum that was built by big pharma, and that's what they know. They know drugs and they know surgery. Although I have two doctors that are on these patches. I'm like, what? Why didn't you tell me? Like, but they're kind of afraid of losing their licenses, you know? And they can't even talk about vitamin C these days without getting into trouble, depending on what state they're in. So,
right. Well, Darlene, we're running low on time here. How does someone get in contact with you to maybe learn more about this, or just maybe ask you questions directly, or have on their show? Because I have some other podcasters that listen to my show. Maybe they want you to come on and talk to their audience as well.
Yeah, the best way is on my website, which is IamReverseAging.com. So that's IamReverseAging.com. And that you can dive into the studies and the science and the patents, and you can see pictures and you can watch videos and you can reach out to me. And I can even set you up with a doctor, a consultation, and you can ask very specific questions and listen to a doctor respond to your precise questions. But you can also just buy the product there as well. And I will always email anybody who reaches out to me on that website. And I would love to help people. I would love to help anybody take charge of their own health.
Outstanding. Darlene, this is great. I learned a lot. That's the most notes I've taken on the talk in a long time. So I have to upload it from my Remarkable here so I actually understand what I wrote. It'll translate it for me into English, into my own English. But thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. And I'm sure a lot of the audience, their mind will be blown at all this stuff that they've been getting told or been doing to try to heal themselves from PTSD, depression, anxiety, you name it, name the acronym. They've been trying to do something about it. There's other ways to do it without having to carry a pharmacy with you. We appreciate everything you're doing and everything you've done for our country.
We appreciate you, Rich, and all that you do for everyone as well. Thank you so very much for all that you do in the world.
No problem. You have a great
Likewise.
This is a message from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Got a question about your VA benefits, healthcare, or eligibility? Go to va.gov, where you can access a new interactive chatbot to ask questions 24/7. One can still browse va.gov for information, but you can now ask specific questions to the chatbot, like what's the PACT Act? How do I apply for disability benefits? What's my claim status? You can access the new feature through va.gov's Contact Us page. Then click on the Start Chat button. The chatbot will continue to improve veterans' access to information about the benefits and services they've earned. This is one way VA is offering seamless and secure access to its online resources.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all of our past episodes and get some of that great Misfit Nation gear. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling, because we are Misfit Nation.